Hey, welcome to the Paranormal Council, where the four various opinions matter. All of our opinions matter. So, guys, we have a very special show. I say that like every week, but they're all special to me. And we're going to be talking about haunted cemeteries. We're going to tell you probably a little bit of our theories. We're going to tell you maybe some stories. I know I've got some stories. Jen's got some stories, I know for sure. And me and Jen have some stories. Now, the rest of the other two, I don't know, but I'm sure they might too. So, guys, we are going to get into it real soon. Just want to give a quick shout out to everybody in the chat. A lot of you are already interacting, so love to see you. And of course, you guys, if you have any questions, remember this is a show you can interact with. Okay, so if you have any questions, any great stories, share them in the comments, and don't forget afterwards you can go to our Discord and also hang out. There's a community there as well. So Jen, did you cut your hair? That's already a question before we got started. So let's get that out of the way before we get into
haunted. I put some more layers in it about 3 weeks ago. They were in there when I was at your house, Andrea.
and for those of you that were also wondering about my hair, it's true. I did not notice when Jen cut her hair. Typical guy. Okay, so all right, haunted cemeteries. So there's been a debate in the paranormal community sometimes about haunted cemeteries, whether they're haunted, whether they're not. And I have visited several, whether they were for funerals, whether they were for fun. Yes, because I can go to cemeteries for fun. There's some pretty cool historical ones out there. Me and Jen got to go to a really huge one. I can't believe how big this thing was. Like in Nashville, it was freaking huge. And so there's some really cool ones out there I've been to over the years. So I think the first thing we should get into, and then we'll get into some stories maybe, is I guess maybe some opinions on. So what do you guys think? Do you guys think cemeteries are haunted or not?
Yep. Yeah, I kind of do. I mean, I've seen a lot of different things. I've got a couple things we could talk about later on after I hear you guys' stories. But yeah, I think that there's something to it. I think that there's obviously any place where the body is resting, that there's a possibility of things returning to the body for particular reasons. And so, yeah, I think it's pretty haunted. It can be.
Yeah. And I'm going to jump in because I'm going to mix up the order. I'm going to jump in and say that I think it's a mixture. I think they can be. And I think that what I tend to find, though, is more of the older cemeteries, some of the more historic ones, or even some of the ones that were right either near battlefields or some of them were battlefields. So when you have that history, that present, a lot of unknown soldier graves, things like that, I think there can be for sure. I think, there's been some modern cemeteries. I never got much out of a modern cemetery that much, but that's just me. That's my thing. But and I've got some stories we'll share here in a little bit too. So, Jen, Stacy.
Well, I would say they're not as haunted as you would really imagine. There's more dead people walking around Walmart than there is a cemetery. Simply because they want to be where people are at. Wandering around the ground where their corpse is rotting is not really, their thing. Now, the exception to the rule is like what Josh was saying, where you're dealing with, violent scenarios. We have a cemetery that's not far from my house where the infamous murderer, and I'm blanking out on what his name is right now, but he's the one that was featured in the Dead Man Walking movie. He was executed, via electric chair. One of the last in Louisiana to have that happen, and was brought back to the family, and they have a family area in a local cemetery, and that one is really haunted, largely because he refuses to go to the other side, fearing judgment and all. So it's one of those local cemeteries that actually has a tremendous amount of activity, largely because he's there. He's a murderer, was part of the Klan, killed people that weren't following through on their end of the bargain and being part of the Klan. So he was sort of like the executioner guy for them. But in that kind of energy, that trauma adds extra juju essentially to that land and that particular cemetery.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Jen?
I mean, for me, it's really easy because, paranormal is everywhere. They're not confined to walls. They're not confined to places. They travel. People talk about them going home with them. So they're everywhere. So why not a cemetery? It makes sense. I don't know if they're any more or less haunted than a particular, like their home or a hotel that a lot of people stayed at. Are they going to be haunted? Sure. Do they have to be? No.
So I'm going to share, it's time for a little story time right here for you. I'll share one of my first scary experiences in a cemetery as a teenager. So me and a buddy decide that, and we had had this girl that was hanging out with us. So we were trying to impress her, right? Because that's how boys do when you're a teenager and you got a girl riding along with you for those late night cruising, right? And so I knew that there was this small cemetery out in the country, and what was really crazy, you had to like drive literally up this little private, or an easement there, but it was in between cornfields, so it was like perfect, right? And so it just really sets the mood. You have to drive up through this cornfield, and then it's like this little fenced in cemetery, and so like nobody goes there. And it's late at night. So we pull up in the corn, turn off all the lights so that way the few houses that were around couldn't see us. And we get out there, and so we all kind of like we're like walking through there all kind of nervous and tiptoeing, and we're like telling things like, oh, I heard that when the sticks fall off the trees in the cemetery they land in crosses, like those kind of things. We're like, oh my god. So we're tiptoeing through the cemetery, and like we look, and there's these railroad tracks that were a little further off, but toward the railroad tracks off to the left there was this big like oak tree, and we see somebody peeking around, like this dark kind of figure. So now this is before the investigator days, so we weren't as brave, and so we were like, oh my god, you guys see that? Oh shit. And we like start running. We go running out the cemetery, and we go back, we just go back down. There was like this little creek bridge you had to cross too, right before where the car was parked. Well, we stop and we turn around and we look, and we're just staring, and we're trying to see in the darkness. There was actually some moonlight. It wasn't a full moon, I don't think, but there was some moonlight. But we could see somebody run from the one tree over to another tree. We're like, oh shit, somebody's out here messing with us. We're like, okay, let's go back. This time we're gonna run at them. So then, and me and my buddy were like, all right. And we told the girl, we're like, you stay here. We'll go handle this. So we start going back in there. We go through the little open vents, the open gate, and we start heading toward, and we saw the tree where he had went to, the shadow went to. Well, then we see him peeking around the corner again, and we're like, we're gonna get you. We run, and we go, and he wasn't there. We go around the tree. There was nobody freaking there, and it was a fence. He couldn't have hopped the fence. We would have heard it. We would have seen him. We were like right there. So it was like once we both went around. Like I took the left, he took the right. When we both came around that tree, like it was a small tree, but when we came around and we're like, oh shit, we're like looking around. We're like, dude. Then we left. We actually left. We started running. We told the girl, we're like, get in the car. And we get in. She's like, oh, what? And we're like, get in the car. We'll tell you later. It just, oh my God. It just, and it was crazy though, looking back on it though.
Yeah, there's a lot of. Go ahead.
Somehow I'm picturing that story.
The story sounds like it's from your book. I don't think it is. I don't think that one's in the book. No, I don't think that one's in the book. Maybe the next book, like another. If I do another book of that type of stuff, maybe I should do a ghost story book from some of the stories I've encountered. That would be fun. But yeah, that was my first encounter with a cemetery, and it took me a while to go back, but that also is actually, though, it is one of the events that did pique my interest in ghost hunting. So
yeah, I think for me, I got a couple of stories, but the one that I kind of come back to a lot of times that I tell on myself is we were out hunting one afternoon. We didn't know that there was this old cemetery there, and we were out hunting, and we kept seeing it looked like somebody's head, kind of like your story. It seemed like somebody's head popping around down. When you kind of on a hillside, you kind of see over top of the ridge, and it looked like somebody was walking just where you could barely see their head. And actually, one of the biggest bucks I actually really have ever seen pops over in that same area. And I was really afraid to kind of take a shot because I'm thinking somebody's over there, And so I didn't take the shot. My buddy was like, dude, because I had actually, we just had like these little flip phones back at that point. And I actually took a picture of the deer, and he's like, and you didn't shoot it. And I was like, well, somebody was back there. Well, not long after that, I can't prove if it was actually somebody or not. But later on, as I was going through that same afternoon, I guess it's getting around dusk, I started noticing these little stones, probably about 6 or 7 inches tall. And there was like 5 or 6 of them just kind of in and around the tree line right there, exactly where I was seeing that head going back and forth.
Oh, wow.
And so, long story short, that wasn't far from a family cemetery of ours. And so we kind of told our parents about it and stuff like that. And Virginia Tech actually came and done a survey up in there, as they always do. And they found some bodies, but nobody knows who they are, what they're there for. I mean, they know what they're there for, but nobody knows anything, but it's now marked and quartered off. So, but it was exactly where I was seeing that head pop up.
That's crazy though. That's crazy.
So I missed a good sized buck. So,
Jen, I know you got a story in there for sure.
Story. Well, it's interesting because for me, cemeteries are very peaceful for the most part. And part of that's by choice, shutting off things. And part of that is, because I let through what needs to come through, and anything else that's just passing through, I don't need to pay attention to it, right? And for the most part, they're pretty peaceful. I was not a rebel in the same ways you were. I did not go to cemeteries in the dark as a teenager. I did not trespass on property or other such things. I also didn't live in the country. So I didn't get out much, I guess. But many crazy stories like that in cemeteries. I do know, like, the old cemetery where my grandparents are actually buried in South Dakota. Um, I remember from being a very young child, seeing the people who were buried there, right? But they were just coming back to say hi, check in, visit. You know, the family lineages that are from that church are generations and generations back, you know, and so, you know, they would come when we'd have like an ice cream social, or we were doing VBS, or we were doing confirmation week, or, you know, any of those things. They would come and like participate. They would just be around their family in the celebration. Um, but I don't have very many crazy cemetery stories. I can tell you about different spirits that I've met in cemeteries, but no fun running and tripping over headstone stories. I don't need cemeteries to trip over things. I'll just be clear.
Right? That's true.
Or
Yeah,
run into trees.
well, like, and like, just to go back what Kitty Cat was saying. So, Kitty Cat, you're right. There is a book. There is a story about the same cemetery in my book, and it involves me and that particular friend and more girls that we were trying to impress. And this was actually the first time we went there. So if you guys want to read about that, you can just buy my book. It's available on Amazon. It's called My Paranormal: A Guide to the Spirit Realms. Anyways, but you can read that story, and that's a similar story, and it's also creepy as well, and involves blood on headstones, and you'll have to check it out. So, but that was the first time I went there. This was like when we tried to take another girl back there to impress her, and then we had that incident happen with the dark shadow. So I would say, like, just to kind of like, we'll fast forward in time, because there's some other incidences with cemeteries over the years. But I want to, since I brought up the Nashville one, I want to talk to about that while Jen's here too, because she was with me. So we were investigating with our friend Harold and some of his team members, and we were out there doing, and we had some pretty cool stuff. I think we had some pretty cool results. I know, like, I was out there. I had some dowsing rods, and I know there was a few times we had. So what'll happen, or what tends to happen sometimes when you have like dowsing rods, is I'll actually get spirits that will point me in directions. And so I went off on my own for a while there. I think Jen started following me, seeing what I was up to. But like, I had this one where I'm like going and going and go, like it was having me go in this other direction, and then it had me go to this headstone, and it was one of the obelisk, or did I say that right? And so, but it had like the mother, it seemed like, and then it seemed like her kids. Was there like a grandbaby maybe on there too?
Yeah, I think so.
We were looking at the ages, but interesting enough, there was no father. And so, I wasn't sure how that was, but I think there was a blank spot for possibly where the father should have been. So I don't know if the spirit just wanted to show me that, but all she really wanted to do was communicate. But I did verify it was the elder, the oldest one. But sometimes they will lead you to their headstones, and then just want to show you something. And like, I don't know, maybe they were just wanting to get something off their chest. Like I said, maybe the husband outlived all of them, and then he remarried and ended up somewhere else.
Well, it was funny about that one though, because we were trying to figure out what, if she had a message, or if she had something she needed to talk about, why she was communicating with us. And I remember Josh asking her, do you have a message? Is there something you'd like us to know? And the rods were just like, no. And he was kind of like, oh, I don't know what to do with this now, for a split second. And then he was like, were you just saying hi? And it was like, yep. And then it's like, okay, thanks. And then all communication stopped. It was like, okay.
And what's funny too is like, so remember how we talked about confirmation bias in another episode? So for those of you that watch, and if you want to learn more about confirmation bias, we have an episode that we did about it in our library. So just go back in YouTube or whatnot. But you know, I was doing a dowsing rod session there with some people that day, and I got a female on there, and I asked her if she was buried in the cemetery or she was there, but come to find out, it was a spirit from somewhere else in the Nashville area. So, and that actually kind of blew one of the minds of another team. They were kind of like, what? How can we be talking to another spirit that not in the cemetery? But it just goes to show that, you know, the spirit realm is not exactly confined to just a physical location right around you. Okay. So I just want to kind of point that out as well, that, you know, just because you're possibly, you know, talking or dealing with a spirit in a particular place doesn't necessarily mean they belong to that place. All right. I've often used this over and over, but it drives me crazy when if you see a team that, let's just say, and I use, Jen knows this example, but I always use this example. So like, let's say you were a team and you're investigating Graceland, you know, Elvis's home. All right. And you get a spirit. Doesn't mean you're talking to Elvis, folks. All right. But there's so many teams that will sit there and be like, Elvis, is this you? You know, and it's like, yes, or whatever. You know, it's always going to be like, they're always talk to whoever the person is at that location that's famous for that location. And it drives me crazy because in what I call the real world, the non-show land, when you do it for years, and you talk to many or been in many situations, you realize a lot of the spirits aren't even living in that location that talk to you. They're not even associated with that location half the time. So it's just, it drives me crazy. So guys, don't have that bias. If you get a spirit on the dowsing rods or whatever, or you're dealing with a spirit in an area, don't necessarily assume it's related to that area. So
hey, haven't you heard the news? Elvis isn't dead.
that's probably why that's probably why I don't talk to him. Elvis, where are you? He's not coming across on the spirit rods. He must be alive.
Yeah, he'd be like 105 now. So
he's gonna be alive in like 50 years. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know. It's sad though. There's a lot of kids starting to not know who Elvis is, and there's young guys that didn't even know who Metallica was the other day. I'm like, what? So like, we're getting to the age now, man, where it's like a lot of classes are being forgotten, because you got to think about it. When some of us Gen Xers and or whatever, like when we were growing up in the 70s and whatnot, we had reruns, and there wasn't like a lot of options. We had like 5 channels, and then even when we saw the birth of cable, a lot of the channels weren't that good, especially when you're younger. You're like, what? Mm-hmm. Home and Garden? What the, who cares? Nobody cared back then about those shows. Hell, we didn't even like VH1 back then. We just wanted MTV. We were like MTV. VHN was for like VH1 was like old people, Yeah. It wasn't until they got the little pop-up video when they were getting a little cooler. But no, my point is that things were very funneled in a pop culture sense. And so a lot of us in Gen X or beyond was still getting an appreciation for the classics, right? We knew about the Lone Ranger, and we knew about the Honeymooners and things like that, even though we didn't grow up in the 50s and stuff, right? But we knew about them because we got to watch all the reruns, because we didn't have much choice. Now all these generations, they've got like 1,000 channels, or they don't even have to watch reruns. They can just sit there and watch YouTube videos all day and play video games. So
Yeah, that's one of
You
the things.
know, that would be a very good experiment for you, Josh, since you don't really tend to get activity in cemeteries, in newer cemeteries. I think the next time we go out there, we should take a TV and reruns and play them in the cemetery and see what happens.
maybe.
Well, it's one of the things that irritates me. You know, you're on the internet and you see, you know, millennials and Gen Z, they review movies they've never seen before. And there's a whole bunch of them that have watched the movie Airplane, you know, with Leslie Nielsen. And they don't get a lot of that movie because it's all pop culture at the time. And but they do get the, you know, stop calling me Shirley line. They're like, oh, that's where that came from. But they don't get the funniest line ever because they don't understand the pop culture reference. There's a point where there's a little old lady's on the plane. And she's like, "Excuse me, stewardess, I speak jive," and they don't understand that the woman who's saying it is Joan Cleaver, the whitest woman in Hollywood, saying, "I speak jive," and they're like, oh, "I don't get it. What is that funny?" I don't know. It's like, oh. No culture whatsoever. You know, leave it to Beaver. They don't get it.
And even like jive was, you know, obviously it was even more aggressive back then, so it was even more funny because it almost felt foreign language, you know.
Yeah.
This is almost turning into one of our after show programs where we go completely off subject and dive into cinematography and shows and history and culture.
Well, I was just watching that this afternoon, so what's brought it to my mind? You know, it's like, you know, what is wrong with you people?
Well, and this all stems back from Elvis and the EVPs and cemeteries and all that, and Elvis is not dead, but yeah, I do think that cemeteries offer, like, it's the starting ground for, I think, a lot of teams, period. Or if you're new to paranormal, you're gonna go hang out in a cemetery, preferably daytime. When you're new, because there's a lot of them that have rules. Some of them you can actually get shut in for the night, and you'll be climbing fences, or if you parked in there, you could be stuck in there until the morning. Okay, so yeah, unless you want to call the police or something on yourself, then you're gonna probably be in trouble. But yeah, so that is my rules. Like, be careful of the cemeteries. You know, make sure you know. And actually, sometimes you can reach out to the cemeteries and just, hey, let them know, hey, I just wanted to let you know we are a paranormal investigation team. However, we just would like to walk around, check things out. We're going to be there close to dark, and they might tell you, hey, we close at officially at like 8, or they can give you some exact time, or they might give you permission to be out there a little later. And it's always good to have permission, because then if the police do show up and it's dark, you can say, hey, talk to Mrs. or Mr. X and at the cemetery. So
yeah, I have to chime in on that one real quick. I on my phone, I've got like 20 cameras around their church. On the left side of on the right side of our church is nothing but cemetery. And I've seen some stuff. I mean, I don't know if I could really verify that it's probably spiritual, but I don't know how many times I've seen people just, you know, they're out there and you can tell they're ghost hunting. And there was times I was like, if I could get one of my cameras out in the cemetery and just have that voice activation and just like, oh, hey, you know. But anyway,
well, that leads me into what I was going to say. I've always wanted to. What you should do this: mount this on the side of your church and point it at the cemetery. They have what's known as ultrasonic speakers. They're little round things. The police use them for crowd control, everything's like that, because they can get really, really loud, like 200 decibels, like the sound of like a jet engine. But the cool thing about them is ultrasonic sound goes into almost a beam. It's a cone. if you're not inside that cone, you can't hear what that sound is. But at the same time, you can whisper in someone's ear and it sounds like it's right in their ear at 2 miles away. And if you point that at the entrance of a cemetery, and you can have it, with a little laser light, have it motion activated to where as soon as they walk through the entrance, it just goes, kill, 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 kill. They will turn around and walk right out.
Yeah, unless they don't get the reference.
Right in their ear.
Yeah, unless they don't get the reference because they're too young.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's what they did with Paranormal State when that TV show was first coming out with Ryan Buell. They had a big billboard in New York, and at the top of the building was the billboard, but they had one of those speakers that was pointed at this one little spot on the sidewalk. Anybody who walked into it, all they heard, nobody else could hear it. All they heard was, look up. And it sounded like somebody was whispering in their ear, and they would look up and see the Paranormal State billboard. It was brilliant marketing on that front, but it was really cool as far as I'm concerned as being for like a security system or anything along that lines, because you can really lean into, hauntings that way. And, trespassers have a tendency to take their first impulse and then run with it. And if you're whispering in their ear, get out, they have a tendency to just do that.
I'm gonna look. I've decided that if I have enough money, I'm not gonna have a headstone carved. I'm gonna have a headstone made, and it's gonna be incorporated with things inside of it that's gonna trip up ghost hunters' equipment. And so they're gonna be like, "Oh my god, this dude's headstone is like, it's like, look at all this stuff." And I'm gonna incorporate some AI. There'll be like a little solar thing to keep it charged. And they'll be like AI to have like AI responses to trip off in their little Ovilus and stuff, so it'll like intelligently respond, or they'll think I'm intelligent responding. I'm gonna be like, help me. They're like, what do you want me to stop? Oh, I'm stuck down here. What? You're stuck down here? I'm in my coffin. Like he said he's in his coffin. Oh my god. I can't breathe.
Monty Python skit. I'm not dead. I'm not dead.
Right? What happened to you? 'Tis but a scratch.
That's why they put the bells underneath the in the old ones. They put the bells and the chains down in there. Put the cages over top. Or to put a cage over top of it. I'm trying to get out. Y'all let me out.
Right?
Have like my bell.
Have the little bell. Have a bell there, but it like actually like motion activates or whatever, and it kind of rings like, I'm trying to help me. But then how many times would they call the cops and then like they dig up your grave?
You got to put a seismic sensor in the ground right in front of the bell.
So
every time somebody walks by,
they actually have like, have you seen those lights now? I don't know. There's like in the graveyard that we have beside our church, people has put these like little pin lights, like flare lights and stuff, and the butterflies, and you go by at night and you see these lights out in the graveyard and you're like, wow, okay. But somebody actually put some bells out there. It was like on this little trinket thing, and you could hear it ringing. And I kept thinking to myself, what's going on out there? So I was actually in mode. I was in spiritual warfare mode going, okay, what's going on here? And walking down through there, and I finally found it, and I was like, oh, come on, guys. You could do better than that. But anyway.
Yeah. I think another cool moment was when Jen and I were at the Nashville one. I was with another kind of like a newer guy, and he had a set of dowsing rods. I had a set of dowsing rods. So I'm like, okay, I was like, use both of our rods and show us where you want us to go. So both of our rods like pointed in a direction, and it ended up leading us a few hundred yards further, and we both ended up at what was her name? Carolyn.
Catherine.
Yeah, I always screw it up, but she was the founding she was the founding member of like the daughter of the Confederacy. So it buried there in Nashville, and it was pretty cool. I was like, wow, because we were there in the Confederate part of the cemetery, and so we both got led to that, and that was pretty cool. And then we ended up just going recently. Jen and I went and investigated the home of Nathan Bedford. Oh, wait, what?
Bedford.
Yeah, Bedford, and that's like rare. I think we were the second team to ever do that. So, but we went there, and then the guy that was there with us was from the Sons of Confederacy. So it was pretty cool. So yeah,
I'm looking to see if I can find the headstone so I can show people.
oh yeah, yeah. I always say Carolyn, but it's not Carolyn. I think when I said that to the guy at the place, he corrected me and told me the real name, and I still mess it up. It's like when you get a name stuck in your head and you just keep going back to that same name, and they're like, no, it's not that. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then like a month later, Carolyn. 2 months later, Carolyn, no, it's not that. But yeah, I think so. I think cemeteries are definitely a mixture, and I again, guys, if you go to cemeteries, be respectful, watch where you walk, and then, of course, for safety wise, you could trip, but even just out of respect, right? Make sure you respect the rules and all that good stuff.
So it is Caroline.
Oh, is it?
Caroline Merriweather Goodlet, the founder of the United Daughters of the Confederacy, 1894.
Okay, well, maybe I was.
I don't know if we can see it.
Yeah, that's the one. It was a really cool one too.
Yeah.
And I think I was saying another name, but then I got corrected to the Carolina, and now that's okay. So that's good. So I got the right one stuck in my head then. All right, that's good. So yeah, I've spent a lot of time in cemeteries myself, off and on over the years, because again, it is a go-to for paranormal teams. When you're bored and you don't have a place to go, you're just like, well, screw it, let's go to a cemetery. They're easy to find, they're easy to go to. You just got to find ones that you can either go to at night or get permission or things like that. That's the only challenge, but they're easy access.
Most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid cemeteries, and ghost hunters go because they're bored.
Yeah, I know, right?
Now, in my line of work, I get called to go there quite a bit. And there is one account that I have. I haven't really shared this with many people. I was doing a funeral for someone in, it's just a graveside. Wasn't really many people there. It was family and a couple of friends had showed up. And I kind of noticed one guy was off in a distance, wouldn't never really come around. I mean, when we asked everybody to come around, he finally did kind of come to it. And long story short, after we kind of dismissed and the family was still there, but everybody was kind of mingling, I kind of made my way over because this guy kind of looked like he was distraught in a way. And, he started talking to me about spiritual things. And he's like, he said, I live right over top this hill right here. And he says, I've noticed I about know when a funeral is going to happen. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, I don't look at the newspaper. I don't look at the internet or anything like that. He says, but I can tell lights that come in at night. And he said, I can tell that there's something going to be happening the next day. And the next day, he said, I saw lights last night. And he said, I wanted to come over here and kind of see who it was. And it was kind of just weird that way. And I've never had, my grandma talked about, she lived on another ridge line and was overlooking another graveyard. And she talked about seeing lights all the time in graveyards at night. So.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. I mean, like I would like to investigate that theory more too.
It was
'Cause
good
I
interview.
haven't heard that too much, so that's pretty cool. I've heard some other things about nighttime stuff. Oh, and real quick, Snowquin said, "Why always at night?" So I wanted to maybe we can throw this around the round table here. Me personally, I think that a lot more spirit activity tends to happen at night, and I think it has a lot to do. You can investigate in the daytime. You can deal with paranormal in the daytime, but I think for what I notice, nighttime seems to be the right time because one, it's just spookier, but two, I think it's the energies. You got the sunlight gives off different energy than like moonlight. Kind of, you get again. There's a different, more positive energy in the daytime versus in the nighttime. People are a little more laid back and maybe even a little more defensive sometimes, or they're just especially when you go to these investigations. I just think for those type of uh, scenarios, and yeah, like even the kitty cat said that maybe your senses are a little more alert too. You're a little more on the defense, so to speak, at night. So I personally think that nighttime just seems to yield more activity. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, and it goes all the way back to ancient Greece and the whole idea of Hades, that night is day, day is night. It's the opposite of what we actually live. They touched upon it in Pirates of the Caribbean, where sunrise is sunset and up is down, that kind of thing, where it's just the opposite on the other side, where Davy Jones' locker is at and all that. But that goes all the way back to ancient Greece on the realm of the dead. Now, on a scientific standpoint, when light actually bends sound, so you can actually hear further at night and hear clearer at night with no light being projected, because sound gets pushed right into the ground, and you can pick up better EVPs. You can pick up better sounds from greater distance, things of that kind, just because there's no light there to push that sound into the ground. And it makes for more interesting investigations that way, because the first response of every investigator at first is like, "Did you hear that? Did you hear that? What was that? Did you hear that?" And you can't really get that so much during the day, and it adds more excitement to it.
I think scientifically too, it has a lot to do with the fact that it's really hard to see a shadow when the sun's directly overhead.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like even Andrea pointed out in the comments, she was also talking about noise. That it's quiet like a mouse, so they come out because it's not as much noise. Noise pollution, yeah. So yeah, it just how like daytime everything's so hectic, and I don't know, you're just not even in the right line of thought half the time. Like I don't think much about paranormal in the daytime unless now, but like I said, things happen. So another little side story, not related to cemeteries though, but since we're telling stories, one of the things that I do is I do internet. Okay, so my day job, yes, I have to work. Contrary to you guys might think I make all kinds of money being a superstar, but I don't. So, so I have to work, and in that I go into people's homes and I fix their internet. Or lately, I've been installing internet again. So, but I was at a customer's house in the city. This was probably about a year ago, and they have an older home, and I didn't really think much of it actually. I didn't really because I was in a section where a lot of the homes were older anyways, and it wasn't like over the top historical type thing. So I'm like, okay, this is an average older home, no big deal. But I'm hanging out, and the customer, she was sitting on the couch on her phone, and I'm in the living room across the living room there, and I'm had just ran a replacement line up through the floor. and I'm sitting there messing with everything, and all of a sudden I hear like thump, 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 and it sounded like somebody took like 3 major steps right above me, and then slid a chair out like they were just going to sit down at a desk or something. And I'm like, and I just stop. I look, and I'm like, and I look over at her, and she was like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, is your husband, does he work upstairs? And she's like, no, that's our ghost. And I'm like, what? And she's like, I swear there's nobody here. And she's like, you can go look. I'm like, I want to go look. And so I went upstairs. And so when you get up to the top of the stairs, where there was a big room to the right, which is right over my head, that's where the footsteps were. And then there was another bedroom, and then there was a bathroom. That's all there was up there. The master bedroom was downstairs. These were like kids' rooms. Well, the room to the right, as soon as I crossed the threshold, there was just this wall of energy that hit me. It was crazy. And I was like, whoa. And I could sense. And then normally I don't like to have my feelers turned on when I'm at work, because I go into people's homes all the time. So I try to keep my guard up. I just don't like to, feel out every home. But man, this was like big time. And then finally I had to confess to her. I was like, listen, I do some investigations, and you brought up ghosts. And so I gave her a card, and I was like, hey, if you would like to get some more answers, man. Of course, she never did contact us, but man, like, I would have loved to, because that was loud. Like that, anytime you get like really good audio like that, like something, because there's sometimes, a lot of times, like probably I would say 90% of paranormal, you're hearing things that you're going, I think I heard that. Like, did I just hear that? Like, oh my God, it's always very faint, or, it's not. But when you get super loud things that you're definitely, oh, somebody definitely walked up there. Somebody definitely sat in a chair. And then when they're not there, like when me and Jen had the flashlight thing, which is a whole nother story there for the people that may not have heard that one, but we can either save that for another one or whatever. But sometimes when there's something so definitive, that's when it's really cool.
I wanted to touch on real quick something about the night. I kind of got a theory, and it kind of goes this way. During the day, they kind of like what Jen said, they're not as easily seen, but also I think they feel like at times if they want to be able to get out in the open, nighttime would probably be a little bit better, so they're not quite as seen as much as in the daytime. But then also, I'm going to flip this around a little bit. I think it's also because more people do it at night, and I think the causal, there's more people going out at night in the cemeteries and sitting there and watching at night. Most of the stuff I've seen is kind of during the day, but that's just kind of me. But I just think it was just interesting how they disappear at night, but then they're more active at night. So, it kind of depends.
Well, and we also have to consider all the different types of noise, right? There's all types of frequencies of audible noise and things like that. But, if you're standing in a big cemetery in the middle of the day, you're not just focused on the space around you, right? Your eyes keep getting drawn to that big, mausoleum over there, or that huge angel over there, or why did that cross break off where it broke off on that stone there, right? Your eyes are going everywhere, so you miss the things that are right around you, whereas at night you can't see past that because it's pitch black, so your focus is in a central area, so your perception is going to focus more on what's right in front of you as opposed to what's further out. So visually, you have less noise at night and can focus better and perceive more accurately.
Yeah. I mean, and I just think the setting's better. I mean, come on. It's like if you want to have a romantic dinner, you got a candle, you got a nice place, right? You want to have a nice setting. Oh, you want to go paranormal stuff? Hey, you want dark, you want spooky, you want the right setting, all right? So, but I think Jester VR had asked a question: is asylums more haunted than a graveyard? I would say the quick answer, in my opinion, is yes. I personally have never gone to a cemetery that was more haunted than an asylum I've been to. Asylums generally have a lot more trauma, a lot more mental cases, so you're definitely talking about much more activity. I think asylums tend to probably some of the most haunted places just because of the amount of either traumas, the mental, um, the mental problems and cases there, all those things. I think asylums are probably one of the top tier haunted places, in my opinion.
It's interesting to me too, because I think back over all of the spirits that I've run into in cemeteries, right? And we think about cemeteries because that's their final resting place, and that's where people go to look for them. But in all reality, if spirits don't cross, if they're here for some reason, if they come back for some reason, they are not going to go to where their body is 9 times out of 10. If they go to where their body is, what they're doing is they're trying to meet family that's there or get somebody's attention. Where they're going to go is they're going to go back home. Or if there was trauma involved, they're going to go to where the trauma occurred, right? Or where they got stuck in this moment and they haven't figured out that they're dead yet or whatever, right? The last place they're going to be is a cemetery because they think they're still alive, or they just want to go home and pretend like this never happened, right?
Right.
So typically when you encounter something in a cemetery, when we're talking about human spirits, it's like, Josh, you and I ran into that one in Nashville that wasn't from that cemetery, but her family often went to that cemetery, and she would go there hoping to run into her family, right? And so I think cemeteries are definitely less haunted than places where trauma occurred, because that's where people go back to when they, especially if they pass with a trauma state. We talked about that in an earlier episode about which one was it? I'm trying to remember now. A Life After Death was the episode that we talked about that in.
Yeah.
And
Well, yeah, and I think so if you want to just quickly talk about a few top tier places, would be like asylums, hospitals, and
High schools.
high schools, middle
yeah,
schools now.
but what's even more, I think, than that is retirement homes. Whether they're assisted living, old assisted living places, or full on retirement homes. There's a lot of trauma that happens in those places, and a lot of spirits that they had dementia, they had, Alzheimer's, they were confused as to where they really were. And sometimes they even believe that that was their home, or, there's just so much that happens in retirement homes. They rank up there. They're often underrated because but there is some abandoned retirement homes out there that I would love to get into at some point, because yeah, I mean, there's those are, I've been to a couple, but I'd like to go to more, because again, those are, in my opinion, some of the top ones too.
I've been called into several retirement homes here in our local area. But coming back to the cemetery thing and hitting on what Jen said a while ago about coming back and seeing family, there is an old, not so much where I live right here, but in West Virginia, they have family reunions at and in the cemetery. They will bring their meals and have the live people will bring their meals and come to the cemetery. I was actually called to speak at one, and it was kind of like, what do you want me to come here for? And he's like, well, we have a preacher come and share a message. We have a meal, and we'll just celebrate together. It's like, okay. So
yeah, Jen and I there was a couple doing a picnic in the cemetery when we showed up at the Nashville one.
Yep.
In Mexico, they dig them up, have a meal, have a drink. Day of the Dead. You know, they prop up grandma or grandpa, you know, and they change their clothes and all this other kind of stuff,
No,
and they, you know, put them back in their box at the end of the day.
some of the
Andrea,
places in Indonesia and Thailand, in places in Tibet, they put the relatives either underneath the floor or in the wall.
so I know Andrea brought up fairgrounds. She said fairgrounds, to every fairground I have been to, extremely haunted. I'm not sure. I can't say I've been to many fairgrounds. I know that most fairgrounds I've been on, my money goes there to die.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or my cholesterol. Okay, what else? What else? What about orphanages? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of places. So, but I mean, orphanages is going to be tough. I don't think I've gone to an orphanage. Sometimes places will have, orphan, like an orphan type, wing, or even a children's wing, ICU type stuff. You know, mostly wherever you can think of places with high trauma, not occasional trauma, because you can find occasional trauma just about anywhere. All right. And like even high schools and things like that. There's always going to be occasional traumas and stuff like that. But when we're talking high, everyday, like I said, asylums, most of them were run back in the day by the state. There was a lot of abuse going on by staff, or cases that were misdiagnosed. You know, there was just a lot of bad things happening on a regular basis. And even some doctors, like in Penhurst and things like that, that were experimenting on patients. So trying to revolutionize science, you know, and things like that, taking matters in their own hands. So, and people often got thrown away to these. You know, we didn't understand certain things, so they would just dump their kids or whatever in these insane asylums, you know, because they didn't understand certain things.
Where's Lafayette Fairgrounds?
I think she's hilarious because she lives in Lafayette, and it's right next to Red Boiling Springs.
They don't
And-
pronounce it Lafayette, Stacy. Here, it's
Yeah,
we're
no.
in Tennessee. It's Lafayette.
Oh,
Lafayette. Yeah, that's where she lives. And like I swear that whole town is in like a giant Faraday cage. And there's cemeteries like surrounding it. And then there's waterfalls in the middle of it. And yeah, it's a trifecta. In fact, Red Boiling Springs is right next to it, and the water there is so unique that people used to flock there at the Thomas House Resort to bathe in the water because it had this unique combination of, I think it was 7 different minerals. And it's all connected through the waterways, underground and above ground, and the whole area is just energetically lit. Not to mention all the witch lore and all kinds of fun stuff up there. So her whole town is special.
well, I was just confused because Lafayette is, you know, famous down here in New Orleans because he was a pirate who fought and basically helped win the War of 1812 in the Battle of New Orleans. He was like the only guy who actually had a battleship, and he was a pirate. So they made him a hero down here and in, you know, Washington D.C. But I didn't know anything about it in Tennessee or Kentucky, where he,
Right.
you know.
Well, that's what I'm
No.
saying. Like that's what I was saying, Stacey. Because like when I first went there, me and Jen had this exact conversation because I was just like Lafayette, and then she's like, "No, it's Lafayette." Lafayette or what the hell is it now? See, I keep my mind. Lafayette, yeah. So
Yeah.
Lafayette. This is when we went on this whole tangent about saying things differently.
Yeah, well, they don't say Burgundy down here anyway. They say Burgundy. So we're just, you know, you put emphasis on the wrong syllable. You know, that's what it's all about.
Right?
Yep.
I don't know. Yeah, and that's what we're like. See, like what she said. Oh, Fontaine of Youth, if you will, is what they say. See, I can do it too. Fontaine of Youth. What is it, Grace Baumberger? I would like to think that there would be a lot of hauntings in churches because of the large number of cases of spiritual abuse and scriptural twisting. Okay, so I'm gonna let Sean dig into this as well because I know he's gonna want to say something about this, but I want to say this: churches sometimes have hauntings because you got to think about it like this as well. We all, or let's say a congregation that goes to a church, they're gonna spend a lot of their week probably just going out, being sinners, and scraping up spiritual baggage, going to Walmart. They're going to go to church every week and bring all of that for spiritual cleansing. Okay. Going to church every week is also about spiritual cleansing. So that's a huge reason as well. Now, as far as those things, I will let Sean kind of talk about some of that. I don't want to speculate too much on that stuff, but.
Well, I got a lot of different things about churches, but this was about cemeteries. But I know that kind of what you just said is kind of factual. I've actually been preaching and seeing things leave people, seeing shadows leave people, and as the word is being pronounced, and kind of like what Grace was talking about, you obviously have spiritual abuse and physical abuse happening everywhere, church as well. I've not seen it that kind of so much as in the church as much as I've seen the other kind of what we just talked about. One of the things I have seen in church, though, is the spiritual battle takes place a lot of times in church. I've seen that happen. I'm seeing I actually have a rather elaborate Sunday morning thing that I do every Sunday morning as I walk through and bless and cleanse and pray and praise and just do different things through that. And because we're connected to a cemetery, we continue to pray certain prayers for that. And so there's just many things, but Grace there brought up something too. I know Grace a little bit there. And one of the things too is being in a place where in the South where you have churches and cemeteries, there's oftentimes a lot of, and I've talked to this group, this panel about it. Our particular church has a slave cemetery that's beyond the regular cemetery. And actually the slaves are buried from the top of the hill to the bottom of the hill. And it's until here recently, they wasn't really marked. And so we had to work through the federal government because it's on Blue Ridge Parkway property. And we've kind of worked through that and had that taken care of. But there has been testimony of my congregation members have seen red eyes and stuff in church. And so there's a lot of reasons why that stuff would be happening in a church.
Well, and there's also, we talk about this in the paranormal, right? Sometimes you can go to a location that has zero activity, and then somebody shows up and all of a sudden it lights off, and it's not necessarily because they brought a specific energy and they just like them better because it's a female or a male or reminded them of their dad or whatever, but because they brought it with them. They didn't know they had it. They brought it with them. And people, I've personally, going to church and doing what I do, I have seen countless people go through their week, do what they do, and then come to church on Sunday and bring it along with them to drop it at the altar.
Yeah.
Right? And to feel better and to get cleansed and to start over and refresh and new goals for the week and turn it over to God. And altars collect if they're not cleansed. And not all churches believe in the paranormal the way Sean does or the way we do. And they don't often do the necessary cleansing. So yeah, churches can absolutely start to stockpile that. They can continue until it's just overwhelming, and churches will even close because of it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I know Grace pointed out just real quick. I didn't want to say that because I didn't want to reveal that, but her daughter's seen a portal, and I've seen a lot of portals. I personally think that graveyards are kind of probably a natural created portal for the gateway between the living and the dead. And even in Europe, they talk about from the church to the graveyard, or from the place of where they view to the graveyard is have to be straight roads. If not, the spirits get lost between there and there, and they'll be in limbo. There's a lot of folklore that we haven't even touched tonight dealing with all of that, and I've kind of learned a lot of that stuff. But I've seen definitely a lot of portals. There's a portal in the church cemetery that I have right now, and we've had to deal with certain things. Some of it's natural, and some of it's not. So I'll just leave it there.
So I want to throw this out there as something to think about, and we don't have to get into it too much because we are going into overtime, and maybe this is something we can carry over into Discord tonight. I'm going to try to make it over to Discord for a little bit. So for those of you watching, if you don't know, we have a Discord, the Paranormal Council. And so definitely go look us up and come join the community. We do an after show. We like to meet up, and sometimes some of our other members will meet up there, and we will talk, and it's a little even more laid back. So definitely. But one thing I wanted to throw out there is, we talk about just like how some of the spirits led us to their headstones just to say hi. But I also have a hard time believing that maybe these spirits are just hanging out at their headstones all the time. So what if there's these portals, there's this connection from, let's say, maybe they are haunting their home, but they also have a connection back to where their physical body was buried, like a link, like a portal link. What do you think? So I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out there. That's definitely, I think, some extra discussion, but let's take that over to Discord. If so, for those of you that are watching, you want to meet some of us over there in Discord. Sometimes it's not all of us, sometimes a few of us, but head over there. We're going to continue this discussion in the after party. Remember the Paranormal Council on Discord. But guys, we do this every week. 8 Central, 9 Eastern, every Thursday. We got a whole slew of paranormal stuff to talk about. We've got stuff lined up for the whole year, okay? For the rest of this year, trust me. We have subjects out the butt, and we're going to have some special guests on some of those subjects. So it's going to be very exciting. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Like. If you haven't hit the like button, I want to see at least 13, 14 likes tonight, okay? Please. This helps us with the algorithm. Guys, remember, seek the truth. We'll see you next week.
Peace.